Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing.
Well, Aaron Rodgers is having an incredible season, playing through a broken toe, very painful, but likely will win back-to-back MVPs. So why not share more feelings about COVID protocols? He recently spoke with Pat McAfee about the stricter protocols for unvaccinated players in the league, and he said, what I don't understand is it makes no sense to me to continue to spread this narrative that non-vaccinated players are more dangerous or these super spreaders, which hasn't been proven to be true. I don't understand this two-class system that exists in our league. There's not many unvaccinated guys left in the league, but it's obviously not a pandemic of the unvaxxed. Obviously, we know about what happened with Aaron Rodgers earlier in the season, saying he was immunized, was actually not vaccinated. So per the NFL protocols, Aaron Rodgers doesn't have to test for the 90 days because he had the virus. So he doesn't have to test because he has the antibodies because he actually got COVID.
Yeah.
He's in that window until a few days after the NFC Championship game. So it actually bodes well for them as far as Aaron goes with the new variant that he doesn't have to test.
Now, Carson Wentz yesterday, he got a huge break, right? Because the NFL's gone from 10.
If they apply it to people who are already in quarantine, which I don't know why they wouldn't, because the NFL and NFLPA agreed yesterday to shorten the amount of time that team personnel who have tested positive to quarantine for 5 days instead of 10 days if they don't show symptoms, and that's for vaccinated and unvaccinated players.
Okay,
so that's a huge and listen, it's not even a break. Like, that's what the CDC has said.
For this variant.
For where we are at this point in the pandemic. There's a lot of hysteria going on, and it's perfectly understandable for people to be upset.
Yeah.
There's a lot of changes. As we've talked about a lot, change is very difficult for people.
Yeah.
I get it. But at the end of the day, on both sides of this, when we get good news, we need to embrace the good news as well. We don't have to live in despair because of the identity that this has created for everyone.
Yeah, I think the NFL is doing a pretty good job on this. I mean, college football is just canceling games hours before they're supposed to be there.
I mean, it's chaos.
So this, and it's like, timeout. This is the difference. This is what I've said about college football, a sport I deeply love, is that college football does not have a CEO.
Yes.
They're literally canceling bowl games hours before. Teams travel, they're away from their families for Christmas, and an hour before, it's like, yesterday, the Holiday Bowl, UCLA is like, oh, we can't play. It's like, okay. The NFL, and this is difficult, I do like how, and some people don't like this, they think it's unfair, but the NFL is taking everything they get from the CDC, and they're constantly changing it because they just want to get games in.
That's what they're telling us to do.
Right.
All pandemic long, there's been like two pockets of people, essentially, right? And then there's a small sliver of people in the middle, like you and I, that just make good decisions, right? For the most part. This has become very tribal, as we know.
Yes.
Okay, and it's exhausting. But the CDC has been telling us what to do, guiding us through this. When the CDC says it's 5 days instead of 10 days, you can't be like, all of a sudden, like, wait a minute, we're not going to listen to what the CDC says, when all along you've been yelling at the other side to tell them to do what the CDC says.
So the CDC is saying this is contagious, but not as punitive.
Right.
So if you get it, you don't have to be away from everybody for even a week, just 5 days. And so the NFL, and by the way, that's what they should do. It's a contagious, but not as deadly virus, closer to a flu. The two people I know that have had it, it's been a fever and nothing else. And which feels more like the flu. So I think the NFL is doing it right, but it does show you the gap between college and pro football.
I mean, college is a disaster.
Lost. It's a disaster.
And this is, I'm with you. This is exactly why you need someone in charge. It can't just be, I mean, this is utterly chaos. There's no one representing the athletes.
Yesterday I was asked by somebody, I didn't have an answer. Somebody asked me, well, who's testing the UCLA players? And I'm like, I don't know. Is it the school? I mean, if I was Georgia or Michigan, I wouldn't test my players. I know they're not in danger. And if they're, I mean, seriously, if you test your players, if you're Michigan or Georgia playing Friday, why?
Well, I mean, I guess that they are. I don't have an answer either. My assumption would be that if someone shows symptoms, then you have to test everyone, which is a big part of what's going on with the NBA right now, is that if you have anyone who shows symptoms or anyone who tests positive for whatever reason, then everyone who's been around them has to test. And because this variant is so contagious but not punitive, people can be positive and have no idea because they're asymptomatic. So it to me, it's not about the question of testing or not. It's if they're asymptomatic and the CDC has changed the protocols or the recommendations, then the protocols have to change. Everything can't be a conspiracy, guys. Like, I'm busy, okay? What am I supposed to do? I'm just going to do what I'm told to do. It's not that hard. I've got stuff to do today. I've got naps to take. I've got errands to run. I can't be digging up Reddit stories all day long. Like, this is what the CDC said, so they should adjust the protocols. That's what it is. It's the end of the story. So the Packers have been steady all season long, while the Chiefs have been a little rocky, but they've made a comeback. According to Fox Bet, both teams currently have the best odds to make the Super Bowl at plus 400. The Chiefs did begin the season at 3-4, but they've improved to 11-4. And they're also the favorites to win their conferences, with the Chiefs at plus 170 and Packers at plus 190, both led by potential MVP candidates. Rodgers has the best odds at minus 175, according to Fox Bet. The next best odds to win the Super Bowl are the Bucs at plus 600, the Bills plus 800, Rams at plus 850, and the Cowboys at plus 900.
By the way,
Cowboys that's interesting.
Speaking of this, the Bucs were favored weeks ago. Why are the Green Bay Packers favored over the Bucs? New information. Packers getting healthier, Bucs getting more injuries.
Yes.
So literally the odds makers, this is what new information does, have flipped Tampa and Green Bay as favorites in the NFC. Why? Bucs with injuries, Packers healthier, several players are probably worth half a point. You add it all up, it's slight. Now, I still think if Leonard Fournette can play, Tampa is a tough matchup for Green Bay.
Well, because their rushing defense is just
Well, I've watched Green Bay struggle to put away the Bears and the Browns, and in both instances, there were lots of mistakes by the quarterbacks for the Bears and the Browns, and Green Bay could not put either away. That teams feel like Buffalo this morning is getting healthy. They got a D-line back, an O-line back, Cole Beasley back. Like this morning, Buffalo is better than 3 weeks ago. This morning, I think Green Bay feels worse to me than 3 weeks ago. They're not putting people away.
Isn't this always the question with Green Bay at this time of the year?
It always is. They're pretty, but can they punch? They're always pretty. They got an MVP. They're unbeaten at Lambeau. It's becoming, to me, the last 2 to 3 weeks, Green Bay started looking like the last 4-year Green Bay.
Right.
Pretty, not tough.
Because they didn't start that way. They felt this year like they were
much more
like
physical.
They were more physical. So Carson Wentz was placed on the COVID-19 list yesterday, so his status for the Sunday's game against the Raiders is in question. If he's unable to play, Sam Ehlinger would get the start. He's appeared in 3 games, has 10 rushing yards, and has not attempted to pass this season. So that is not great news for the Colts, who are attempting to get him back. Carson Wentz, that is. According to The Athletic's Zach Kiefer, the Colts are also discussing, we talked about yesterday briefly, possibly getting Phillip Rivers back for the game. He was 11-5 with them and went to the playoffs last year, but he's obviously retired and is coaching high school football now. Despite retiring last offseason, Rivers did tell the LA Times in August he wouldn't rule out a return. They're 9-6 and hold the 5th playoff spot in the AFC. Now, as we just discussed a few minutes ago, the new COVID protocols could bode well for Carson Wentz if he is asymptomatic. If he has any symptoms, then he may be in quarantine for longer. But this is a big game for the Colts.
Oh, absolutely.
5th playoff spot in the AFC, hosting the Raiders. They're 6.5-point favorites, according to Fox Bet. But we're going to have to watch this leading up into the weekend to see who's going to be available at quarterback for them.
Good stuff, Joy, with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.